Good morning. Good morning.
I actually tried. My voice wouldn't go up. It just kept. It's Monday. Yeah, it's tough sometimes.
Just 2022 things, you know.
That was one of my goals for 2022. Is just talk like this.
You know, I've been meaning to let you know that last week when I saw you, I meant to say, see you next year.
Good times.
You got any of those this yet?
No, I have not. I might have.
You're welcome.
I might. Thank you. I have been missing the dad jokes. Mostly, I've been the purveyor of dad jokes.
No.
I got my buddy with a real zinger the other day, and he didn't even react.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's
sounds
how
like
you
the
know it
perfect
was
dad
good.
joke. Yeah. Well, now do tell. Give us the context here.
Oh no, I can't even remember the joke now. It was so bad. It was so awful. I can't even remember it. Oh well,
No.
whatever.
Guess we'll live on in dad for me.
I'll think of it, about midnight tomorrow. I'll be like, oh man, I should have, and then I'll jot it down in my dream journal. And,
yeah, that's good. You know. So, did you have a good couple days? We ended up taking off Thursday and Friday.
Yeah. I had a decent Thursday, and then I came down with a migraine Friday and Saturday, which was, of course, New Year's Eve day and New Year's Day.
So you partied?
I partied hard.
Yeah.
It was just, I got all the hangover and none of the fun. Yeah, it was great.
Nice.
So, yeah, and I think, though, a lot of it was this stinking cold front that came in.
Oh, you think that's related?
I do. I think that's something to do with the pressure. But
with all the cold air coming against a contained container filled with hot air.
Hot air.
Yeah,
so much hot air up here.
There's so much.
Like,
the weatherman's like, "Oop, we're gonna have a high pressure front here. It's gonna take a while." And then over the 2 days, it I guess stabilizes through your ears and your nose.
Well, I try to plug them up. I don't want to lose all those valuable thoughts that my hot air.
Yes.
I might not even know who I am anymore if I lost all of it. So it's just a deflated little shrunken head walking around. Yeah, that could probably happen.
Well, we were outside when the front came in. Actually, on Saturday we were playing disc golf, and all of a sudden, I was about to throw the disc was going, and it was a hole in one naturally.
Well, you threw it. So,
I threw,
yeah, of course.
And then all of a sudden, this giant just gust of wind just comes in. Temperature dropped 20 degrees, and we were playing right off of Lake Louisville. And so the water comes in off the lake, which I don't know how much time you spent on beaches or lakes, but wind coming across a big flat plain that it blows a lot stronger because there's nothing in the way. And so all the go ahead.
I'm
softball
just curious
here.
about
softball there.
Exactly. What happens there again? There's a strong blowing that you got.
Strong blowing. Did I mention I was with Danny playing disc golf? Yeah. Yes. So these jokes I'm sure would land quite well there.
No, I'm trying to reel them all in. We'll behave like grown-ups on this show.
Maybe. No promises made.
I will reference that we might be grown-ups one day on this show.
That's the real trick. So it just came in, and all of a sudden it was 30 miles per hour. No, I can't.
30 minutes of being blown.
Honestly, it's probably about what it was. It was the front 7 holes, and they're all right there, and eventually, it was better. It was done. It was finished.
Okay.
We moved to the more forested, wooded area.
Oh,
which was good. But then it was 40 degrees outside, and half of us are in shorts, and we're like, "Yeah, bro, not gonna be able to do this one."
No.
So we got through a couple more holes. We're gone. We're leaving.
Yeah, that's it's kind of weird because it goes from, it was 80 degrees the day before or something.
Yeah.
It was really up there, and then it dropped down to 17, and you just go, oh, well, this is amazing. And
right.
Of course, I can't help but think of bumping into these articles that talk about climate change, and that they're all we need is a 1.5 degrees Celsius change, and then we're gonna have all these problems. And and they're just and I want to say but hasn't Texas always had this? And then I'm oh, I don't know. I'm not anything
Well,
climatologist.
I mean, it's
or
funny
whatever.
because we like to talk about what things have always been or how it's always been this way, and then you talk to someone who's like, "Yeah, it's always been this way." I'm like, "How old are you?" And you're like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So how long you been here? Okay, even 30 years. Sure, that's a pretty good chunk of time. But come with me, my friend, to the annals of time. Let me show you this book."
The annals of time.
Where this book represents all of the time in creation of this earth, and you are in the last period of the last sentence of the last dot.
Yes, yeah.
Even those
It's like-
30 years compared to the millions and millions, right?
Yeah, and we get really hung up on it, and I don't. It's kind of fascinating to remember occasionally what a speck we are, and especially as the new year rolls around, I think this is very apropos.
Right.
Like, yeah, we're just a tiny speck, but have you heard of this? What is it? 4,000 weeks?
Yes, that's how many
Like, how many
working weeks you have or something like that. I was
Yeah,
gonna say
yeah.
like in your life, but I was like, no, that's only like 40 years or so. So I was like, must be like working
Yeah, I don't.
age or
I haven't.
good
it's a-
body. But yeah,
Good body.
the short answer, useful body. Let me rephrase. The short answer is I have heard of it before, and I'll let you describe it.
Oh yeah, no, it's it's that kind of idea that you've only got these 4,000 weeks, and so the idea that you only have so many Mondays, so many Wednesdays, Tuesdays, right, and like the shortness of each one of those, like
Right.
when you start actually charting it out and putting it into a visual system, is just mind blowing. That you might only have like 40 Super Bowls left or something, however you want to sort of categorize
And the
it.
Cowboys still probably aren't going to win it again.
I know, it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also is a nice reminder on occasion of just like how short our time is,
Yeah.
and just like, okay, like let's do it, like let's pay attention to this time and get something done. Like that's another way to kind of like at least prioritize it. Or you could just feel despondent and just lay in bed with migraines
Join the club.
the way I do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm a very cultured person. So this weekend I was watching Netflix with Danielle. There's a show called Emily in Paris. So another culture, so totally getting cultured. No, it's
The culture of Emily.
Yes. It's this American girl who goes to France, and I don't know if it's an internship or a job, but she's in like the fashion industry. And naturally, there are some mistakes she makes as a young woman trying to make her way in the world. But also the fact that she's American and she's going into this fashion world, which she knows some about, but not in France, and all these things.
Français.
And yeah, oui. There were cigarettes involved. I saw them.
Oh,
yeah.
Galois.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Oh, bless you. And the reason I brought it up was you're talking about this 40,000 or weeks or whatever. What 4,000?
4,000,
4,000.
yeah.
40,000.
40,000 sounds cool.
Yeah, so 50 a year. Yeah, math. So 4,000 weeks. Well, it was her birthday, and one of her coworkers was like, "Can I take you somewhere special for lunch?" And so naturally, she's like, "Yeah, you could take me somewhere special for lunch." He takes her with a sack lunch out to a cemetery. and he starts talking about this kind of thing. He's like, "I like to have a reminder every year of of death."
Right. Memento mori. Yes. Yeah, that's the kind of great. The Stoic thing is to remember death every day, to think upon and dwell upon death, which the philosophy and the Stoic philosophy anyway. And I've been trying to do it for a while. I think we've talked about it once before on the show, but I've been trying to do it for the last 6 months or something. And what's fascinating about it is you start circling around the same problems of like, I don't really like, okay, I want to be a good person, but what does that mean? And wait, are you ambitious? And should your ambitions count, or should your relationships with people count? And you start like hacking through some of this stuff and like trying to figure out where the hell you actually want to go. And so in that way, it's pretty good, but it's sort of they also call it a negative visualization. And so one of the things about negative visualizations are they are negative. So you kind of have to force yourself to do them, and you can actually just watch your mind be like, I don't want to deal with this. Your mind will just like take off and take a left turn and run away.
No, that's interesting. Especially, as you mentioned before, like we as humans are always trying to avoid discomfort. Yeah. We're trying to avoid discomfort. So it sounds like the perfect use of that. It's like, hey, we recognize that you're trying to avoid discomfort, but by visualizing that thing that you don't want, it actually is a powerful tool, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. I think if you do
it brings you
right.
migraines in the middle of the night.
That's what I get from it.
So, this is the way it's always been ever.
Always.
Always.
Because
So
I've
now
had
that
them for
you've
the
done it
last
once
couple of
and you
years.
recognize that's how it is, there's no value in it. So you should probably stop.
I should probably stop having them. That'd be great.
Welcome
Hey,
to What the Hell is
brain.
Water, where we strongly employ sarcasm.
Yes. Brain, stop feeling sick.
Yes. No, but that is an interesting little dive into the stoicism, and also like trying to figure out what should I be doing, and which is a great transition into one of the things we're going to talk about today, which is how to start the new year right. So let's jump to that after our recap real quick. So we took off Thursday and Friday, so we ended on a glorious hump day.
Hump day.
Which I ended up playing that game with Danielle. Jaipur is the name of the game, and it has camels in
I
it.
thought you
Yes.
were talking about something else.
Oh, no, that was with Danny on Saturday. Yeah. Different
Well
type of
done.
game. Yeah.
Nice.
But on last Wednesday, we had Alexandra Mannerings on again, and
yes.
we talked a little bit about kind of one of the analogies she brought into play was how reality is only, like, you are only perceiving your version of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And she talked a lot about, hey, use the analogy of, think of it like a map. We are all creating maps that represent the world, and by definition a map is never perfect. There's always something that is off and some compromise that's being made, even with the globe as we see it and the map that we see on Google Maps and all that stuff that people kind of accept as like, hey, that's the world. Well, there are errors in that, and there's ways that it's shown to make it better for us, but actually slightly less accurate, things especially around the pole, like Antarctica and things like that. It's like, it doesn't exactly look like that, but that's how we perceive it, so we can work with it. And so that was one of the things we were talking about as we were going through reality. Keep in mind that you have that map versus reality, and that everyone else has their own maps, and so that can be a little bit different. And so we also talked about the total. We talked about having some reference for scale, like, oh, am I talking about the total number of people that maybe they came down with an illness or had something happen to them? If you say just the absolute number, it's a way different metric than it's per capita, for example. And so we were talking about, hey, make sure you're doing those apples to apples comparisons as you're comparing things. Like, hey, if we were talking about the grocery store, it's like, make sure you're comparing by weight and not like per item and per item. And we talked about how, a lot of times they'll do these kind of marketing tricks where it's like, hey, we want these things to compete right next to each other. Well, this one, which is normally the one you'd go for, is 20 ounces. Well, they put this more expensive one over here that looks nicer and is the same price or maybe lower, but it's only 16.7 ounces or whatever. They just do a little bit less in the same size bottle, basically.
Yep.
And so we talked about that in the practical, like, grocery store example, but we also talked about it kind of from like when I'm seeing things in the news and hearing stuff, like, make sure I'm aware of what metrics are being used.
Yeah, no, and I think, one of the good ones, we just lightly touched on some of the COVID stuff as well, is that you'll hear numbers that this many thousands of people have passed away from this in this area. But that's different whenever you look at densely packed areas per capita versus sort of more rural areas. And so sometimes the numbers are used in ways that tell a certain kind of story. And that story may or may not be really accurate. And that's one of the things that we're, learning a lot from with Alexandra, is like just paying attention to how those stories are shaped.
Yeah, and recognizing that, there is always a story being told, and there's always someone selling you, even if it is just yourself, your mind subconsciously selling you. And so being aware of that is very valuable. And this idea of stories and mental stories and how they're written and how to be aware of them, that ties in really nicely with the book that we're going to be reading soon called Crucial Conversations. So we wanted to make sure to bring that up again because we are going to be doing some sort of I don't know exactly. It'll be a book club. It'll be some discussion on the show. It'll be a separate series or what. But we will be doing Crucial Conversations. So if you guys haven't heard of it before, check it out. It's a book. The main thing that I got out of it, among other things, but the thing that was most valuable to me was it helped me be aware of all the time we are creating stories for ourselves and for others based on the information that we're getting from somebody. And so maybe, for example, somebody cuts me off in their car. I write the story for them that they are doing some personal attack on me. They are trying to piss me off and all these types of things. And I start to get all riled up. When in reality, it's like, hey, if you look at what's actually happening and you have more information, then maybe that story isn't exactly line up with how it's going on in your head. And that's just a simplified example, but this happens all the time in relationships, and that could be, it doesn't have to be personal. It could be work. It could be familial, with your family. It could be all these different types of relationships. So we'll be talking more about that book in the future. So make sure to grab that if you haven't already. And then the last of the recap for Wednesday was telling people to get out, to pay attention to their financial notifications and say, hey, recognize that these things, and just to be clear, when I say notifications, I mean like on your phone or your computer, you have something pop up that says, hey, you've got that bill coming up, or you're approaching that budget, or hey, make sure that you look at this. You're spending more on that than you normally do. Using programs like Mint. Another one we mentioned was YNAB. You need a budget. YNAB. And then, of course, there's, banks, credit cards, and other things like that have their own apps. But we're talking about, hey, there is value in having those notifications. But if you have them on all the time, they can basically control how you feel, and they can make you feel negatively. And maybe while the time you're trying to relax, it pops up, and then all of a sudden it just sends you spiraling.
Yeah. We covered quite a bit of ground on that last one. We did good. Good nice us. Way to end the year.
Yes, way to end the year. And I had a viewer point out something that we're gonna give a little more detail on another day. But there is an iOS feature. So on your iPhones, your iPads, you can do a notification summary. And so I'm not particularly sure how to set it up because I haven't dove into it yet. But for those of you who are out there might want to try it, I believe it allows you to say like, hey, during these hours, like, don't send me every notification, but send me a summary at 2 o'clock or 3 p.m. or once an hour or whatever. And then it just bundles them all so you can process them in a batch, do them, and then move on, right?
Yeah, this is this is kind of a funny concept I'm just going to throw in there as a tangent. But I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about hedonism and these kind of different things like that. But they were talking at some point about wanting to live in a digital world or a digital reality, and how 10 or 15 years ago, if you told somebody, like Nozick's famous thought experiment was that if we hooked you up to a machine and you got to live out whatever you were thinking about, whatever you wanted to be your good life. It could have struggle and challenge involved, or it could just be you getting everything you ever wanted. And we put you into this machine. It's a lot like the Matrix or something, right?
Okay.
But you would have this like either a wonderful life or a cruddy life or whatever you wanted. And we hooked you up, put you in there, and you felt all these things. Then would you want to do that? Because you would know that none of it is real. And and almost everybody, back when he wrote this, I think in the like 80s or 90s, everyone was like, no way, that sounds like crap. But this professor was saying that increasingly everyone is like, yeah, sure, I'm fine with that. That actually sounds like a great life. And so increasingly people are sort of more interested in this realm. And the only reason I bring that up is to circle back around to this idea of they were casually talking about phones and phone usage and how we're now reliant on the tool that traps us to also basically monitor us, right? So we have to set up notifications on our phone not to notify us, but our priorities are to get more distance away from the phone, but we rely on the phone to keep distance from the phone, which means we're just further attaching ourselves to it through these other cycles. And so there's sort of a dangerous loop of using technology to solve your technology problems. But it seems to be where we're heading. And so that's the only reason I'm bringing it up. I don't feel either way about it, really. It seems like a priorities issue. But yeah, using your tech to actually generate more more reliance on tech to solve your problems.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, if you look at a job, any job, in the ideal world, you want to use the right tool for the job. And it's the thing about technology is a lot of times maybe it's providing the best tool for the job, but it comes with all these downsides. And then the best way of handling those downsides is yet more technology. So,
yes.
Even if it's objectively true, like that's still a problem.
Yeah. So sorry.
No, that's good.
We'll just spin out into the cornfield.
No, that's good. All right. Well, real quick, I wanted to highlight Danielle's comment here in the chat. She says that maps also make me think of Jungle Cruise, the Disney movie on Disney Plus. Leave it to her to tie everything back to Disney. Let's be real. So I'm not surprised there. I have never heard of that movie. Have you?
Jungle Cruise?
Yeah, I don't know if we're the best.
I don't know.
I don't know if we're the
Got
best
wrong.
audience for that one.
Man.
you and me are like, oh,
Yeah, I could.
Has Danielle shown it to me yet? No.
So
not
what?
yet.
Yeah, what movie did I go see yesterday? We went and saw The Matrix.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
new one.
the new one. So that's like in that vein. I'm completely down. But when you start talking Disney movies,
Well, let's talk The Matrix right after this intro.
yeah.
Helpful for life. Welcome to What the Hell is Water. I'm Reed Garcia, founder of Helpful for Life.
Ryder Richards, guy in a blue shirt sitting on a couch. Just sitting
And
on
silently
a couch.
singing. It is Monday, January 3rd, 2022. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome to What the Hell is Water. It's a show where one co-host lofts up the other co-host to explain the show on the spot. And that's what the show is about. So please join us for the rest of the episode.
You get a lot more of that.
So real quick, one other person in the chat, aka Danielle, she was mentioning yesterday we were watching the skincare. We were watching Explained. Have you ever watched that show?
Oh
Explained?
yeah, the Netflix series.
Yeah, so real quick, we'll talk about this and we'll go over our topics for the day. So the Netflix has a series called Explained, which is like 20 to 40-minute episodes. Each one's by itself, and they take a specific topic and they explain it in a useful way. So pretty cool docu-series. I like it. And they've come out with other ones too, like Explained the Mind, Explained COVID, maybe Explained like sex or the body or something like that. They now have a handful of different explained things. So it's useful and it's a good way to learn a couple things while being entertained and be like, oh, that's a cool fact, and it's great for telling friends or family. But oh, did you know about this or that kind of thing? So we watched one yesterday on skincare, and it was basically talking about how it's like, oh, you apply this one thing. Well, although that's the best thing to moisturize your skin, it actually, strips your body of this and that. And oh, by the way, your skin is like this whole microbiome of, bacteria, and that's good. And, even viruses and all these stuff that exist on your skin to let it be essentially kind of like a fertile soil. And also like a barrier to protect your body and all this type of stuff. And so the thing in the show was like, hey, well, you apply this one thing, but then if you're going to apply that, then you have to do this to undo the damage to that, and then do that to undo the damage to that. It's like next thing you know, you got like 10 products, right?
Yep.
And it's funny because it's like even the people who were on the documentary saying like, yeah, you shouldn't do all these things, they still had their list of like the handful of things. It's like, yeah, it's in between like a couple and too many. You got to find that right spot for you.
and still,
Yeah.
like the experts are still doing it to
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
So it's an interesting.
So what is your skincare regime?
Some people ask me all the time, Reed, how do you look so luxurious, soft, supple, moist?
Damn, soggy. How do you look so soggy all the time?
All the
Reed?
time, and they're like, especially on hump days, I just notice it's glowing. And yeah, my skincare routine is basically nothing.
Yeah, I follow the same one.
Yeah, I use shampoo, conditioner. I used to use now I've been using a dandruff one. Even though like I don't really have dandruff, and I've used a body wash, and I use the same one now for a while, mostly because I bought a lot of it.
Yeah,
and so it's like, well, I'll just use it till the end. It's done good enough for now. And now over the last year, as I've heard and read more, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll revisit that once my soap runs out.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've survived fine enough for now.
Yeah, I don't think these are like make or break deals. It is kind of interesting though, because this whole industry is circulating around all these products. For us.
Fortunately, I'm on the not very much side, which in my opinion is probably a better side to be on that side than all the way on the other end. Because when you go on the other end, that's when you start to cause problems, right? And
yeah, or fix them. I don't know.
Or both.
If you have 30 products, then you can finally fix all that damage.
Exactly.
That you did. Yeah.
Oh, and it was really interesting too because it talked about basically how they were one of the original like capitalism and marketing type of companies, and And there's of course some racism dolloped in there, with like skin lightening and some of the
Oh, right.
advertisements like, oh, you start out all dark and then you look all perfect and smooth and whiter, and it's like, okay, some of these things, yeah. So it was an interesting one, but yeah, seeing like in print and media, and it's like, oh, here's all the ways to make it better, and here's this kind of scientific information that seems scientific to make you feel more comfortable about it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll put a pin in that one for now.
Yeah, sure.
Before that, Blackhead just pops, and oh wait, no, that's the Whitehead that pops. I should have watched the episode more closely.
Pimples.
What was I thinking? Pimples. So today we want to talk a little bit about what it means to start the new year right. And before we jump to that, we're gonna get a quick little update from Ryder on the Matrix, since a wise man once said it defined his youth. You didn't sign exactly those
Fight
words.
Club.
Between the Matrix and Fight Club. So I want to get your hot take on the Matrix. So we'll talk about the Matrix, and we'll talk about what it means to start the new year right. So jumping right into the Matrix. What is the title of this one, anyways? Do you know?
Resurrections?
Matrix Resurrections.
Yeah.
And so I know for sure they did back in like the 90s, early 2000s, whatever, the original trilogy. Did they do more than a trilogy, or?
There's comic book stuff and animated shorts and stuff like that, and they had a digital series called, oh geez, I'm gonna forget the name of it, but there was something like 9 shorts that were done around it. But yeah, it was, so this one was, I don't know what, we're on like a 20-year anniversary or something to come out with this, and so that's been interesting to think about too, because you bring these older actors back and it keeps referencing the original, and all these people keep coming up and saying like, oh man, that changed my life, oh man, that changed my life. Like in the movie, they're sort of taking that into account. They're kind of making fun of it, because at some point one of my favorite scenes, because of course I work in sort of marketing and branding a little bit, is they're having this like group, and they're sitting around at this big table, and they're talking about doing this Matrix 4. Inside the movie, they're talking about doing it.
Nice.
And so there's a whole lot of Baudrillard sort of simulacrum, this kind of stuff going on, where everything is simulated, and people are going like, for number 4, our words are originality and fresh. I'm like, there's no way you could do a reboot and those be your key words. But of course, this is a marketing team, and so people keep having these terms they spin out, and they just keep bombarding people and hitting them with over and over again, and it's really tacky. And there's some interesting things about it too. There's a lot of, I would say, socio-political commentary that's embedded in it as well. And part of this might be because the Wachowski sisters, their politics coming out.
And this is the producers?
Creators.
Okay.
Yeah, a director, creator. I think Lana Wachowski was a director, but they also both transition from male to female. And so there's some sort of ideas in there about how you see yourself versus how reality sees you.
Just to be clear, the sisters, the creators, in real life.
In real life.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, just make sure.
Yeah, and so there's some sort of background in there that you can get into. There's also a lot of philosophy in basically the first half of it, and then it starts just getting like action movie out of control. Like everyone's kind of coming in. There's just a bazillion fight scenes, because of course that's why we liked the original Matrix, and they were even talking about that, like the problem with making another one of these where it's all just going to be fight scenes and bullets and all this kind of stuff, and amazing visualizations, because that's what sort of captures people. But there's also this sort of philosophy embedded underneath it. And I always kind of look at these kind of shows, and I also sort of pay attention to who the bad guy is. In the first rounds, I had this guy that was the architect, and the architect is who created the system. And in that sort of idea, then people are sort of cogs or pins.
Just to be clear, when you say architect, sorry to interrupt,
no.
you mean the architect of the Matrix system.
Matrix.
So like system. A system architect, not like I'm making a building architect.
No, right.
Okay.
And it's sort of, the architect symbolizes a way of thinking, right? That I will build a system, and then people will embody it. And the problem with a lot of systems is that people are messy, and they don't do the things you want them to do.
Okay.
And so the original Matrix had problems with that. They were always trying to control the people. And so in this one, it's more interesting because the bad guy is actually an analyst. So he's like a therapist. And so the idea is to just sort of perpetuate normative behavior, and letting your libidinal desires, whatever those may be, guide you forward, right? So if you have ambition, if you have drives, if you want a family or kids or whatever, then giving you all of those things, and that actually taking the place of you trying to find true meaning or purpose. And so this kind of being a different version of how capitalism or our culture and economy has taken us over. And so there's some sort of big bogeyman that sort of float in the movie. And so when you're watching it, you can think about those things. That's what, of course, what is going
Yeah.
through my head.
Well, so I mean, that was one of the questions I was gonna ask. Is like, all right, so I get how you picked up on these things. One, being a fan of the Matrix. Two, especially having dove into philosophy, if not for a long time, at least in depth over the last couple of years, it seems like. So I get that you're looking for and seeing and picking up these things. I guess my question for you is the average viewer. Let's say there's X% of the population that's just gonna go watch a movie and say, wow, interesting, entertaining, like not catch any of that stuff. We'll just write those people as just watching it for entertainment. Perfectly fine way to watch a movie. Then like the middle who like maybe they're just watching for entertainment, maybe they pick up on the bigger things. Would you say they would pick up on these things, or would you say they're more like real subtle and undertones? Or
I think there's a lot of sort of hammering done in the beginning on the philosophy. So maybe the first third of the movie, there's a lot of talk about this kind of stuff. And then I think it just keeps shifting. And I think that towards the end, it's all just a race to get, Neo and Trinity safe kind of thing. And in that way, it turns into kind of more of a classic action movie. And the visuals are great, of course. It's all really compelling and, just beautifully shot. And so I think towards the end, you might have forgotten exactly what the premise was that we started with. And so in that way, I think a lot of people might like it anyway, even if they don't dig into all the philosophy. They might go, I'm sure some smart stuff is going on here, but oh my goodness, did you see that badass move?
do you, and you think that's exactly like what the creators were thinking? Like, okay, fine, we'll do it. But we're going to get in our messages. We're going to do the things. We're going to say the things we want to say. Then we'll give you the chunk that you want. The action
like,
and stuff. We'll give you the things that
pudding.
Yeah. That's funny. That's good. And I mean, it sounds like it worked. So the summary I got from one of my friends was, if you're a really big Matrix fan, then it's a great movie. Like, it's a really good movie and very entertaining. And he's like, and I am a Matrix fan. But if you're not a Matrix fan, then was it entertaining? Was it good? Yes. Was it amazing? Maybe not. That was one of my friends' takes on it. How would you agree with that?
I have the same thing. Like I feel the same way. Like I'm a fanboy, so I was gonna love it no matter what, probably. But the other side of that is that I think about, I don't know, maybe 2/3 of the way in or so, I was just like, I don't know if I really care what's going on right now. Like, and that's even me as a fanboy, just kind of being like, yeah, I guess y'all are going to fight each other, and then you're going to go do some more fighting, and then there's going to be some stuff that happens. And I guess it's part of it is over the last 20 years, getting so inured to so many blockbuster action movies. Like, it's just hard to keep your attention.
Well, the craft has changed so much in the last 20 years too, right? I mean, for reference, like the original Matrix that came out, like they, if I recall correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, they pioneered this technique called bullet time, which is where the classic Matrix scene, like slow motion, dodging bullets, and you see the bullets flying past, and you see the, Neo doing this dodging thing and stuff like that. And it's actually really cool how they managed to achieve that effect. And tell me if you know differently, but I believe what it is essentially like this long track of cameras, and each camera is, basically triggered at a certain time, so where it, not only is it these slow motion moving effects, but the camera is actually moving as well, and they're able to do some cool tricks using, photography, videography, filmography, cinematography, all those fancy words, and technology, frankly, to combine all those things in a way to where it looks like it's a physical camera, a single camera that's moving and shifting in slow motion in 3D in real life, but it's just this effect that's achieved. And so they were able to use that and a couple other things to make this a very, very cool movie, especially for the time frame.
Oh, when it came out, this movie was mind-bending. The visualizations were unlike anything you'd ever seen before, and the funny thing is, everyone else picked up on it and started running with it.
Right.
So they still have amazing visualizations in here. They have some great shots. Some really cool stuff happens. But I don't remember there being maybe any of these sort of singular epic moments that are just quite as mind-blowing.
Which arguably is harder and harder to do these days because we've seen so much, right?
Yeah. Well, it's also whenever we start putting the visualizations, which is style a lot of times over substance, right? So we've moved into this space now where we're doing a lot of things that have style to them. and we're sort of increasingly letting that take over for any kind of substance that the show has. So this show's of course trying to incorporate both, but that's also harder to do today, I would assume. Is that once our sort of taste, our action flavor has to be so high, then how are we going to sneak in those more subtle, substantive moments? Like,
Right.
there just might not be space for it anymore.
Yeah, I mean the analogy I'm thinking of is just like after you taste something like extremely strong, and like if we're talking like in photography terms for those who are aware, like you have the saturation way high, you bite into that fruit that's basically like candy, like pure sugar, and then like you try and have something like with a much more subtle flavor afterwards, which is worth appreciating and noticing and nuance and all that kind of stuff. Like it's going to be hard to detect that subtle flavor right after you have that big old sugar ball, right?
Yeah, so I think there's something about that. It's fun when they weave them together, and it's just, I think it's also the art of storytelling has gone up, and because I think we've gotten better at hacking whatever the human system is that reacts to these things. So it's a good movie to watch, to also sort of look back and go, 20 years ago this is what was going on, and this was epically mind blowing. Today this is what's going on, and we're still kind of going, people are going like meh, and I'm just like, wow, like that is a phenomenal shift.
And it's all in the same life, right?
Yes, exactly.
To bring it back to how we're talking about, well, it's always been this way, 30
Yeah.
years, how much has changed? Well, that's interesting. Any last thoughts on the Matrix before we move on?
Oh, no, I'll probably bring it up continually over the next week or so as I think of more things related to it. But yeah, I think there's some compelling sort of ideas that are in it that are also a major shift from where it started. And so it's the update also of the viewpoint and the politics, I think, of the writer-director team.
Ah, yes. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for the homework. Now I have to go watch. I have to go watch all the Matrixes now. The Matrices. And hey, how do they say it in plural? The Matrix movies.
Matrices.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Got to do some Matrix multiplication. Since I've seen this, since I saw the movie originally back when I was much younger, I have done Matrix multiplication. I learned that in college,
nice.
and learned a lot more about philosophy, technology, filmmaking, all these types of things. So I actually think it would be interesting to go back and watch with a fresh lens. So I'm looking forward to doing that, and I'm sure we'll talk about it here because why not?
Yeah, sure.
So the last thing, since I don't even
gone on a little too
oh
long.
no,
but
that's kind of like the Matrix movies,
They do. They just keep going and going.
No, so I gotta ask, and I honestly don't even know what this means because it's been so long. Red pill or blue pill? Which would you pick?
Yeah, red pill. I'm a red pill guy.
Okay, he's a red pill guy.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I don't know, but we'll find out. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over to starting the new year right, which we put in quotation marks. Why do you think we did that?
Oh man, what is right? What is right for you?
This is a very careful question I asked because we could be sitting here for a few hours. We start down that path.
Writers got more words. That's what's gonna happen, and y'all are all gonna just tune out.
Yeah,
and that's understandable.
We're just have a second channel. Writers got more words. Just like if we just let him keep going.
Where does this
5
end up?
hours later?
Oh man, yeah.
And that's how Ryder got his migraine.
I know, he just talked so much on that hot air.
Yeah. So so we were pointing out, hey, what does right actually mean for you, right? And so that's one of the things that a lot of people, when they're pushing things on you, whether it's a company, whether it's news, whether it's somebody like us trying to say, hey, here's some things you can do to make your life better. Like they're saying, hey, do it this way. This is right. This is better. But it's worth pointing out that better may not be better for you, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of interesting what we're bombarded with as being right or correct or good, right? And sometimes I did have at one point, my therapist pointed out to me that being good and being whole are two different things. And it's better to be a whole person than to keep trying to be a good person. And that sort of blew my mind. So I'll leave that out there.
So say that one more time.
It's better to be a whole person than a good person.
I like that a lot, and it kind of reminds me of a little one-liner that Alexandra gave us last Wednesday, which was, don't try to be a right person, try and be less wrong.
Less wrong.
Yes, and that was like, yes, that's very, very poignant. It's like we're all going to be wrong, if not all the time, at least at some point. So, and every statement that we have that is right is not even necessarily right. It's just less wrong.
Yeah. Less wrong sounds a lot more realistic as well.
Less unrealistic.
Yes. Let's double negative that sucker.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. No, I like it quite a bit in terms of, yes, we're all going to be wrong. We're going to be mistaken. Let's just, okay, acknowledge that, try our best, and make that a goal to just like keep trying. Because that's the other problem is getting stuck and just stopping, assuming you've got the answer, and then just stop.
Correct, because you should always be searching. Because guess what? That target, that's going to be continually shifting and changing, right? And as time goes on, ideally, like that. Maybe I say ideally. I don't even know if it's ideally. Maybe it's not ideally for you, but a lot of times what happens is you're looking for this target and it's over here somewhere, right? But there's no way for you to really know where it is. So you point over here and then you start going in that direction. And then as you get closer, you're like, actually, no, it's more over here. And so it kind of shifts in this quadrant and maybe you're narrowing down closer and closer to something. But maybe as you're doing that, you realize, actually, no, target's way over here, not
like
even on
playing
screen.
Battleship.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
No, that's
It's like,
kind of
I
what
don't
it
know.
is.
I'm just kind of guessing, but I'm pretty sure if we start covering this whole territory, we're going to figure out if there's a ship over there.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's kind of what it's like, right? And so the same kind of concept. So figuring out what's right, a lot of times is, hey, you don't have to know. Just do a little bit of thinking, do a little bit of analyzing, pick something to kind of go after and move towards, and then do it. Like we say on the show a lot here is separate the do from the think. So do a little bit of that thinking up front to say, all right, what is it that I want to be doing? And then you can start to walk in that direction, work towards that direction. So that's kind of one little tidbit there. Another one is to not put too much stake on this clean start, this, New Year's, this whole resolution, like a very common trap people fall into, right?
Yeah, I mean, like we're part of a continuum here, so just sometimes it's just keep doing what you were doing.
Right.
It was already working. Like that's one of the fascinating things is to go, what did work last year? Maybe that's it. Maybe you just hang on to those things. The idea that we're always having to add things to our life or like do this clean start you're talking about, like, okay, well, that was it for that year. I tried all these things out and some of them worked, some of them didn't. Now I'm going to try a whole new bundle of things. Maybe that's not the best.
And think, not only am I going to do those things, but hey, I'm going to do all of the things, and it's all magically going to change and go away. I know I've been doing these things wrong, quote unquote, or these things I don't want to do for years and years and years now. But now,
Finally.
because that calendar page flipped up one more page, overnight, all going to
Bam.
change, all going to go away.
Yeah. Man, I love the power of these arbitrary calendars, right?
Yes.
Like, talk about a map that is not the territory.
Right.
Like, it's just this abstraction that's sitting in front of us, and we celebrate these random days on it that are somehow chosen, right? As we could have started the new year in the summer, but instead we have it, January 1st, and that's in the winter. And so we do this thing, and we just like give so much importance to this, and yeah,
I just want to clarify. It's in the winter for us in the northern hemisphere. If you're below
but
the
it's
equator,
summer,
a whole
that's
different thing.
Excellent point. Oh, see, it's all a construct.
It's
What is
part
of
time?
the Matrix?
Yeah.
Yeah,
ahead.
but no, I'm just kind of thinking that we do put a lot of pressure on these things. On the other hand, if you're the kind of person that is, it is strange. We were talking about stories earlier and the power of a story. When you put pressure on this date and you make this date meaningful, and then you start building your life around this date, I don't know. Is this going to get you to change? If it does, well then, okay, maybe we double down on that story.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Maybe that's kind of faulty to always be unwinding these things and untethering them.
For sure. And then, I want to point out, we're not just here to be, what's the word? Hypercritical, questioning everything. Cynical.
Cynical.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's
Yes.
the one. Yeah.
We're not here to just be cynical, but we are here to point out, like, hey, here's some of the traps of that line of thought.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, let's talk about some of the good things that come from this thought process, right? Well, one is just the fact that so many people are doing it. And by all means, we're the first to caution you. That doesn't just mean if everyone's doing it that you should do it. However, one of the ways to get things done, one of the things that helps people psychologically to achieve things is to do it with other people, right? And so, hey, personally, and this is how, if you're a listener out there, this is what you go and you say to your friends, like, look, I personally am not going to prescribe to this concept that I need to reset myself every year, but I will participate in your petty little games because I see the benefit of this extra psychological benefit of us working together. So you pick your arbitrary task, I'll pick mine, and we shall work towards it.
I like this guy.
Yeah, me too. Here.
He's so kind of like logical and condescending at the same time. It's pretty nice.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Call me king. But yeah, no, so you take advantage of the fact that a bunch of people are doing this goal setting. A bunch of maybe your friends and family are interested in it. Oh, you're seeing it on the news. You're seeing it on the radio. Like, okay, you're having that reinforcement time to say like, hey, all right, like this is a time you can use for goal setting and things like that. And guess what? It's 2022. So now if you want to learn a little bit more, if you want to do it better, more sustainably, things like that, there's so much more knowledge out there now than there used to be. It's not just, hey, write something down and then it'll happen. It's like, okay, here are some ways to write this thing down. Here are some traps to avoid falling into. Here are the types of goals to look for. Instead of going for some big thing, try and look at a habit or routine you can establish that is something small that you can do every day or on some type of iteration that you can then build upon. And there's a whole bunch of these small little things that you can learn and stack upon versus just like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym or I'm going to lose 15 pounds.
Yeah. There's a lot of little goal-setting mechanisms, and we do know enough about the way the human brain works now that if you do kind of want to sort of hack yourself in some positive directions, set up some little baby goals that will get you to your big goal without making it seem so painful. So you're not having to burn that willpower all the time, but letting these things happen more naturally for you. There are systems now that you can read about and you can employ that will help you along the way. So that's one of the great parts about being in this time period that we're alive. Previously, I don't know what it was. It was just like, anger was like how you achieved your goals. You just had to stay angry until you achieved things. And so now we kind of have different systems in place that are, I would think, much more healthy. So yeah, if you're kind of interested in that stuff, like we've talked about some of these little behavior systems that you can employ on the show, and maybe we can link out to some of those. But there's also things like not getting overly caught up in sort of, let's call them vanity metrics when you get into these holidays. When you get into this stuff like losing 15 pounds, I think this is just a goal everyone has every year. We're told we should have it. And most people don't do anything with it. Some people do. They stick with the going to the gym for 2 to 3 months, and then that's it. And this is something else I kind of think it's like, if you're not going to do it, or if it's not really important to you, maybe just don't have it as a goal. Maybe find a goal that's actually more aligned with you. Just maybe it's eat healthier. Maybe it's not going to the gym. Maybe it's not losing 15 pounds. Maybe it's just like, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's cutting sugar out of your diet. Maybe that's how you do these things. Maybe there's a lot of ways. So sometimes the goals can get too arbitrary and socially construed. And I think that you might want to personalize them for yourself.
Yeah, so I'm glad we're talking about the diet and the weight loss thing, because that does seem to be, at least in America, one of the main things people focus on here. And so an exciting announcement for our viewers at home is actually on Friday we have a special guest coming in. His name is David Orozco, and he's a nutritionist. Might mess up his exact title, but he's in nutrition, and he is all about rethinking and reshaping the way that we think about food. And this is especially important topic for people who have struggled with this for years and years and years. And there's a term called yo-yo dieting, where it's like, oh, I'm going to do this thing, and just like a yo-yo, it goes down, but then it comes right back up to where it was before. So the term of yo-yo dieting, and hey, maybe I look at food and weight, maybe weight is one metric, but recognize the other metrics that are involved as well. And I feel like that's a trap a lot of people fall into with food and exercises. They look so focused on that one number of the weight that they forget about all the other values that come from eating well, like healthier cardiovascular system, the chemicals that get released when you're enjoying the meal, all those types of things, and same kind of thing with exercise, right?
There's like so many benefits from eating healthy.
Other than just weight loss.
Yeah, it's funny when people go, I'm going to lose 15 pounds, I need to get a gym membership. And we're talking about like systems that perpetuate themselves, right? Is getting a gym membership, purchasing something, maybe that's not going to help you lose that 15 pounds. There are other ways to do this.
If you're in America, your first response to most problems is, what can I buy to fix this thing?
Yeah.
quickly or instantly for
Yes,
me.
yeah.
And this is one of those cases where it's like, no, it's not going to happen like that. You're going to have to do a little bit of sustained work going forward. So we have him coming on as a guest on our show
That
on
sounds
Friday.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're working on planning out a cohort with him to where we can have a multi-week course with him so we can retrain people on their relationship with food. So that'll be hopefully coming out in late February, so we can start getting people in the right mindset for that. So we're talking about starting the new year right, and we talked a little bit about goal setting, some of the traps people can fall into, some of the psychological tricks you can do around that. But one of the things you mentioned was doing a little bit of review, and I want to make sure to highlight the importance of that. So hey, anytime that you're looking forward and you're trying to say, hey, what do I want to do in this upcoming time period, whether that's a day, a week, an hour, a month, a year, a decade, whatever it may be, a great first step is to reflect back on what you've done up to that point. So you can see, hey, here's what I've done up to this point. Here's what was good, which is what you were pointing out. Hey, make sure you pay attention to what worked well. But then you can also see what didn't work so well. And you can see, all right, aspirationally, I said I wanted to, learn that language or do ABC, but I didn't make it happen this year. So then you start to analyze and see, okay, well, what did it look like when I tried to do this? And now what can I change this year to not be exactly the same so it doesn't happen again, right? And we actually had a GAR where we talked about that exact topic.
Yeah, that's which is great. It's sort of, I was thinking about this maybe yesterday, how many of the systems that we know about, yet it's very difficult to employ them, such as going back and reviewing anything. How many people keep a journal and you never go back and review it? How many people know systems but won't take the 10 minutes to sort of implement them? But sometimes that review can really help shape your directions where you go next. For instance, I've been thinking that I have filled my life up with all these small tasks, these little things that I'm trying to accomplish every day. And at some point, there's some of them, almost all of them are beneficial, but they're also draining because it's a lot of small things. And, I don't know, I have a checklist of, somewhere now around 12 items that I try to do every day. And and they can be tiny things, but you feel productive doing them, but at the same time, it can feel draining. So the idea of adding one more on top of it is like, where are you going to get that extra time? Where are you going to get that extra energy? And then I was thinking to myself, you're just going to have to wake up an hour earlier. And I'm like, is that the solution to everything? Is to just always every year wake up 1 hour earlier? So at what point do you start dropping things as well?
Yeah. So that's a great point, right? So make sure that you're reviewing to see what went well, what worked, what didn't. And then also reviewing, hey, what are some things maybe that I could drop or should try dropping? And I bet there are a lot of things that people think that they couldn't drop, especially if it's something they've done for a long time. It's like, that's how it's always been. Well, in my opinion, that's the time you should probably question the most. Like, hey, okay, I've always been, going over to that person's house on Wednesday, for the last 10 years. Like, is that something I want to keep with that regularity as part of my life? Or is it something maybe we change to once a month or every 2 weeks, or maybe we do it on a different day, or maybe it's a different format? And I don't know those answers, right? But that's for you to just like look inside and ask, like, hey, do I want to do the same thing, or do I want to keep doing something new? And that's the thing about like analyzing, questioning, like staying the same is fine, right? I want to make sure people are aware of that's an option. But if you're deciding to do something differently, all right, here's how you can do it differently. And oh, by the way, don't do the exact same thing and expect a different result, right?
Yeah, that's always the sort of MO for humans. We're champions at just repeating ourselves. So yeah, how do you break that repetition if you want to? How do you that's the whole thing with habits and habit formation as well. As I remember hearing a while back, and I don't know if it's true anymore, but it takes like 3 weeks, or what is it, 6 weeks to create a habit and 3 weeks to break a habit. And there's all these kind of numbers in there. So one of the things I would say is if you're going to try one of these things, breaking a habit or starting a new one, you have to give it about 2 months for it to really sink in.
Don't do pretty much anything just once and expect it to be different or amazing or whatever. And if it goes poorly, recognize like, hey, this is part of the process. This is the first time that I'm trying to do this thing. Like there's going to be some things I fail at. There's going to be some friction. And so that's a really big part that we want to make sure to push with the goal setting is, go in with grace in mind. Like one, don't set the bar so high that you're never going to achieve it. Set something that's actually like achievable, and then, shift it from being long focused of, by the end of the year, I'm going to write this book to, I'm going to work on that book, 3 times a week, every week this month or something like that, where it's more focused on the action and less on the end result. That's another really good technique. So yeah, and I think the review and making sure to recognize that you should probably consider removing some things before adding some things in. And then one of the things I want to talk about was it's just a simple mindset shift of, if you look at every single thing that you want to do or you need to do or just that you do, if you look at it all as like a checklist and as a thing to do, it can start to feel a lot more overwhelming and like, oh, there's all these things I need to do, and now I just need to add another one on there, kind of like you were just saying. And oh, by the way, as Americans, one of our cultural some of our cultural baggage we have is that we come from a place of lack. We always think we're busy. I mean, when's the last time you asked somebody how you been and they didn't mention busy somewhere in there, regardless if they're like a Fortune 500 CEO or like a stay-at-home retired empty nester, whatever, right? And it's like,
man.
busy.
Yeah, that was my just over the holidays, and my father-in-law was just like, well, I finally got rid of my 3rd job. I'm just down to 2. And he's been retired for years, but this is still the conversation we have.
And so recognizing that you come from that place of lack and that always feeling busy, things like that, that's an important thing to do. And so having that shift from, here's another thing I got to add onto the list, just heap on the pile, versus recognizing like, no, okay, as you're building those habits, maybe it will be a thing you do or a thing you have on your checklist, but especially if you do the habit stack technique. So for example, you already brush your teeth every day. Well, right after you brush your teeth, now you do that extra thing. Maybe it's that 5 minutes of reflection or quiet meditation or whatever you're trying to do.
I try to double up on those. Usually I brush my teeth while meditating while I'm on the toilet. Just try to like loop them all in real habit stacking.
And then you're just like really reflecting. All of a sudden you're like, wait a second. All right, back to reflecting. And yeah, I like it.
Yeah, thanks.
That seems really effective.
And so by that mean, knocked 3 things off my list immediately. Yeah.
And to be clear, bad idea. Don't do all those things.
Don't do this.
Well, any other thoughts on starting the new year right, goal setting, things people should keep in mind? I mean, obviously, we could go down any one of these areas for a while, and that's something we ask of you guys out in the audience. Like, if you have one of these areas that you'd like to hear from us, you'd like to hear our take on it, let us know, because there are a lot of people talking about these types of things right now. So, I hesitate to just jump right in as if this is like what everyone wants to be hearing. But any other aspect of that you think we should touch on?
Plan some fun into your goals.
Yes.
Like, don't do all this self-improvement, beating yourself up stuff. Like, plan some fun in. If that's for you, if that's travel, if Omicron goes away or whatever, if you can do it safely, whatever it is, if that kind of works for you, if that becomes something like you've always enjoyed reading books but haven't been doing it lately, if you want to go see more movies, I don't know what it is that's going to bring you pleasure, but plan those in as well. That's one of the things that often gets left out, is when you're developing a lot of goals, a lot of them are this, I need to get better and I need to do this. And it can get a little bit, sort of debilitating, because they're all so focused on these kind of like, I need to make myself into something else.
Yeah.
So plan some time in to have some fun.
Amen to that. And if you're the type of person, we're talking about, just have to mention COVID, because we're talking about planning and fun and seeing people and doing things, traveling. Like, if you're the type of person who you've locked yourself in a room, you've not done anything in forever, recognize that you can experience the world and you can go do things in a safe way. And if you haven't seen our episode earlier with Alexandra, where we talked about using the idea of kind of micro COVID exposures and allocating yourself, I get X number of micro COVID exposures per week or per month or per year, year, looking at it at that way and recognizing that, hey, COVID is one threat of your health and your safety, but every day, regardless of before COVID or after COVID, you're already exposing yourself to all these different risks. So doing it in a way that is understandable and safe and planned out. Maybe that's what you want to hear. Like, hey, maybe you can travel. Maybe it just looks a little different. Maybe you take a road trip somewhere. Maybe you make sure to do things outside. Maybe, there are these precautions you can take where you can travel, you can experience things. If you are locked in your room and not doing anything at all, recognize that there are some steps you could do to allow you to experience life a little bit more. And if you're on the other end of the spectrum where you're partying and you're going everywhere, not vaccinated, not wearing masks, all that kind of stuff, perfectly fine. You do you. Not perfectly fine, maybe, but make sure you are aware and start to consider the people around you, and you can make those choices for yourself, but make sure you're not forcing them upon others as much as you can. Any tidbits or thoughts or guidance or modification on that?
No. I mean, it's the COVID thing is a sticky conversation to get involved in. But yeah, just be careful, be safe. Like, there's a lot of repercussions that come out of it, and a lot of them we don't know. So there are smart ways to travel, like you said, just hopping in the car, going somewhere, camping out, staying in a nature preserve. There's all these kind of fun things you could do. I have a friend who does hypnotic hiking tours.
Oh.
And so, those are some options that you might take into account. Like, try some sort of meditation retreat. There's some things out there that people don't normally think of when they think of vacation, but could actually be relaxing and helpful. Most of the time on our vacations, we seem to book a whole bunch of things in to capture as much experience as possible, and we come back exhausted. So maybe try a vacation where you come back energized.
Yeah, and even if you're like, oh, it's cold, it's winter, I can't do anything outside, it's like, okay, well, maybe you're gonna stay inside, maybe you go to another place where the weather is more amenable to that. But also recognize there is value in going somewhere else, even if you are going to stay inside, because you're getting a change of scenery, because you're going to be hearing different things, you're going to be smelling different things, you're going to be eating different foods, you're going to be exposed to various different topics. So that changes the way your mind thinks, the way your body feels, just getting out of your normal element, especially if you're the type who's been locked in the same exact, movie essentially for 18 months, 24 months, whatever we're at now. It could be valuable to just get out of that.
Yeah.
Well, with all of that being said, so today, just to recap, we started off, we had a little bit of a, hey, how's it going? How have the last couple days been since we took off a couple days last week for the holiday? We recapped our episode last week with Alexandra where we talked about metrics, and then we talked, after Alexandra, we talked a little bit about managing your notifications, especially when it came to personal finance. And then today we talked a little bit about the Matrix, since Ryder went and saw that, and he's admittedly a bit of a fanboy, so we went and saw that yesterday. And we talked a little bit about what it looked like, how it's different from the previous movies, and maybe as people go to watch it or rewatch it, some of the things they could keep in the back of their minds. And then we talked a little bit about what it means to start the new year, quote unquote, right. And we pointed out that there's not necessarily a right. It's that's up to you to decide, meaning you, the individual, what is right for you. And we also kind of used the language of maybe it's not right. It's less wrong.
Yes,
So we talked about less wrong, and then the other one that was similar to that.
Which I'm blanking on.
Which we're blanking on which is perfectly fine. Or it's think double negatives. Maybe you'll think of it that way. But yeah, so we talked about starting New Year right.
Good, not whole.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Whole. Work on being whole, not good.
Work on being whole, not good, and work on being less wrong, not more right. And when you're looking at the new year, making sure you reflect, as we were talking about separating the do from the think. So do some thinking now before you do all that doing, and reflect on what you did, what went well, what didn't go so hot, what you enjoyed, and make sure you're incorporating all that into as you go forward into this day, this week, this month, this year. And we talked about, hey, maybe instead of aiming for the big thing way at the far end of the park. By the end of the year, I'm going to do X. Focus more on things that you're doing every day, every week, something more regularly. And instead of, I'm going to write that entire book, maybe it's, I'm going to start writing. I'm going to engage with the book every day, or something where it's more about actionable, achievable that you can do. Any other last recaps? Top thoughts?
No. This is one of these things I think we could go on forever with. But if there's a certain something that we missed, let us know. If there's areas or topics you want us to dig down deeper into for you, we'd love to do the research. Come back to you with what we find.
Yeah, or bring on a guest, and so let us know if there's a certain part of this planning that you would like to know a little bit more of, you'd like to hear our take on. So you can let us know in the comments below on whatever platform you're on, or you can go to helpfulforlife.com and hit contact us in the top right. Any challenge that popped to your head as we're talking today?
Oh no, I don't have one.
No, that's fine. I've got one right off the top of my head because I liked it a lot, which was plan something fun. Plan something fun, and I would encourage you. I'm going to make it a two-pronged challenge. Plan something fun for the short term and plan something long for the medium or long term. We didn't mention it in this segment, but we did in one of the earlier ones that, hey, if you're trying to improve or trying to do a thing, for example, learn a language, well, hey, put a trip on the calendar. Doesn't matter if it's 6 months out in the future, a year in the future, whatever. You have that trip to Spain or Mexico or whatnot, or even just that part of town that is you're going to the Mexican restaurant and you're going to try and order in all Spanish. Whatever that may be. By booking that day, you're giving yourself that deadline. You're going to make some things happen and you're going to have some fun. So similarly, pick something in the short term. I would say this week even to have some fun, especially for the type of person who doesn't have fun very often. This challenge is especially for you, and it's okay if you need to schedule in your fun because, everyone's got the different things they focus on. Some people, all they focus on is the fun and they need to schedule in some productivity. And some people are all productivity, all stress, whatnot, and they need to schedule in some fun. So schedule in some fun in the short term this week. What is one thing you can do? It doesn't have to be long. Just pick it and do it. And then something maybe in the next 6 months or the next year, plan something fun. And what might that be for you? I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Sounds fun indeed. Well, with that, everyone have a wonderful week, and we will see you guys right back here tomorrow.